2 in the morning, and there's that scratching behind the kitchen wall again. That's how it all started for me. Not with an idea, but with 3 nights in a row of not being able to sleep in my own house. And what I ended up doing to fix it for good is not what the pest control industry wants you to do. Because if I tell you straight out, they lose a customer forever. Look at my hands. This is real. And in the next few minutes, I'll show you exactly why a $3 solution beats everything you already bought at the store. My name is Levi Miller. Before I show you how it's done, I want you to know where I've been, because if you don't understand why the other methods failed, you're going to make the same mistake with this one. I tried glue traps, $20 a box, and they caught 2 mice out of the 15 I had in the house. I tried an ultrasonic device, $40, and the mice kept walking right past it like it was just another piece of furniture. And when I ran out of ideas, I called an exterminator. He quoted me $180 a month. No guarantee they wouldn't be back in 2 weeks. I hung up the phone and sat in the kitchen thinking there was no way to win this fight without spending a fortune every season. Nobody paid me to tell you what comes next. The person who actually solved this in my house wasn't a specialist with a truck and a uniform. It was my grandmother, who never had a serious infestation in 40 years of country living, and who did something so spring that I'd been overlooking it without even realizing. Here's the real problem that no spray and no ultrasonic gadget ever solves. A mouse doesn't come into your house because it likes the smell of your kitchen. It comes in because it found a gap. Its skull doesn't have rigid bone like ours. It compresses, so it can squeeze through a hole the size of a dime. Every one of those scent repellents you bought, the mothballs, the sprays with industrial-strength peppermint, they're all trying to solve an access problem with a smell solution. And that's like putting up a "Do Not Enter" sign right next to a wide-open door. The mouse smells it, avoids it for a day or two, gets used to it, and goes right back through the same hole. That's what nobody tells you when they sell you the $18 bottle. I know this sounds strange, but the method that actually works attacks both problems at once. It seals the entry point physically, and it also makes the air around that entry point unbearable for a sense of smell that's up to 1,000 times stronger than ours. This isn't some internet trend. It's what country families used for generations before an entire aisle of chemicals existed in every store. And once you add up everything you'll need, the total cost doesn't go past $3. Because chances are, you already have most of it in your house right now. Before I show you how to apply it, let's look at what you need, because every item on this list has a specific job. None of it is filler. First thing you need is steel wool, the same kind you use to scrub burnt pots, the coarsest grade you can find, grade 0 or 00 if you have a choice. A box of 2 or 3 pads runs you $2 to $3 at any grocery store or hardware store, and 1 pad alone is usually enough for several entry points, so your real cost per job lands closer to $1.50. Why steel wool and not expanding foam or caulk like some videos tell you? Because a mouse can chew through foam, it can chew through caulk, it can chew through wood, plastic, even poorly cured concrete if it has enough time. But it can't chew through steel wool. Its teeth are built for gnawing wood, not for gnawing metal woven into thin, sharp fibers. When it tries to bite through it, it hurts its mouth, and a mouse doesn't come back twice to a place that hurt it. Second thing you need is peppermint essential oil, the same kind you might already have in your kitchen or bathroom for headaches. If you don't have it, a small bottle costs between $2 and $4 and lasts you months because you only need a few drops per application. A mouse's sense of smell is built to detect threats and food at distances we can't even imagine. And concentrated menthol overwhelms its scent receptors in a way that's genuinely painful for it, not just unpleasant. I want to be precise here because safety matters. This is safe for kids and pets when you use it the right way, diluted, and never left somewhere a cat could lick it directly, because cats are more sensitive to concentrated essential oils than dogs or people are. Never apply the oil straight onto a surface where your cat sleeps or eats. Always dilute it the way I'm about to show you. Third thing you need is plain cotton balls, the same kind you'd use for makeup or first aid, and those cost next to nothing since 10 or 12 will cover an entire house. And fourth, optional but I always use it, a little bit of caulk or putty to seal around the steel wool once you've placed it, so it stays firm and doesn't shift over time. If you don't have any, that's fine. Tightly packed steel wool alone already does most of the job. That's everything you need. Total cost? Between $2 and $3 if you started with nothing, and basically $0 if you already had the peppermint oil like most people do. Now let's get into the process, and I want you to follow along with me step by step because the order matters. Step 1. Find the entry points. I always do this at dusk or early in the morning, because that's when the light hits at a low angle and lets you see shadows and marks more clearly. You're looking for three things. First, holes the size of a dime or bigger at the base of walls, around pipes, near where cables enter the house, at the corners of garage doors. Second, grease marks, those dark, oily lines on the wall, because a mouse's fur leaves a trail every time it brushes past the same spot going in and out. And if you see a grease mark there, that confirms it's an active entry point, not an old one. And third, small, dark pellets near the hole, about the size of a grain of rice. That's the clearest proof of recent traffic. Don't worry if you find 4, 5, even 8 different points around an average house. It's more common than people think, and that's exactly why buying just one trap doesn't solve anything. You're patching a symptom in one spot while the mouse uses the other 7 entry points without a problem. Step 2. Prep the steel wool. Take a handful, about the size of a golf ball, and roll and pack it tightly with your hands until it forms a dense plug, not a loose, fluffy ball. The tighter it's packed, the harder it is for the mouse to find a weak point to start gnawing at. I usually fold it over on itself 2 or 3 times before shaping it, so it ends up with more layers woven together. Step 3. And this is where most people get it wrong. Soak the steel wool with the peppermint oil before you place it, not after. Add 8 to 10 drops spread across the whole plug. Why before and not after? Because if you apply the oil after inserting it, the scent only concentrates on the outer surface and evaporates within a day or 2. If you apply it before, soaking the whole fiber, the oil stays trapped inside the steel wool and releases slowly over weeks, working like a natural, long-lasting diffuser. This is exactly what my grandmother did, though back in her day she used crushed, fresh mint instead of bottled oil. But the principle is the same. Cold metal holds a scent far longer than wood or fabric does. Step 4. Push the steel wool plug directly into the hole, pressing firmly so it's snug against every edge, with no loose gaps where a smaller, younger mouse could try to squeeze in from the side. If the hole is bigger, use 2 or 3 plugs together until the whole space is covered. I use a flathead screwdriver to push along the edges, making sure it's packed all the way to the back, not just covering the entrance you can see from outside. Step 5. And this is the part most online tutorials skip entirely because they don't understand it. Place 2 or 3 cotton balls, also soaked with a few drops of peppermint oil, within about 1.5 feet of every point you just sealed, on both the inside and outside of the wall if you can. This creates what I call a rejection zone. A mouse that hasn't yet figured out its entry point, is sealed, comes along the same route it always uses, guided by its own scent trail and the trail of other mice in the colony, and before it even gets close to the hole, its sense of smell is already picking up an alarm signal so strong that in most cases it turns around before it ever tries to gnaw anything. It's the difference between setting off an alarm after the burglar's already inside and putting up a warning 3 houses before he even gets there. Step 6. Repeat this at every entry point you found. Don't leave a single one untreated. And let me tell you something I learned the hard way. The first time I did this, I sealed 4 out of 5 entry points and left 1 untreated because I figured it was too small for a mouse to fit through. 2 weeks later, I was still hearing noise in the kitchen wall at night. I went back and checked that 5th entry point I'd ignored, and sure enough, there was a fresh grease mark. An adult mouse can squeeze through a gap barely 1/2 inch wide if its skull allows it, so don't underestimate any hole, no matter how small it looks. Step 7. Refresh the peppermint oil on the cotton balls every 7 to 10 days during the first month, and after that, once a month is enough for maintenance, because by then the colony has already learned that area isn't safe and stopped trying to come back. The steel wool itself doesn't need any maintenance. It lasts years in place without the oil inside it ever fully running out. It just loses scent strength over time. But by then it's already done its main job, which is the physical barrier. Now let me show you the variations on this method, because not every house and not every animal is the same. If you've got a garage or a big outbuilding with a lot of possible entry points, like drain pipes or vents, the same logic applies but with a bigger steel wool plug and more layers, because those are spaces where a mouse has more room to try different angles. If you have cats in the house, and this matters, don't place the peppermint-soaked cotton balls anywhere your cat could lick directly. Tuck them inside a piece of cloth or behind furniture, so only the scent reaches the air but not direct contact. Because like I said before, cats process essential oils differently, and a concentration that wouldn't bother a dog or a person can irritate a cat's skin or mucous membranes with direct, repeated contact. If the problem is out in the yard, around the base of the house before mice even try to get in, you can make the same oil-soaked steel wool plug and bury it partway near loose soil areas where they tend to dig access burrows. It works just as well outdoors, except rain dilutes the oil faster out there, so refresh it every 5 days instead of every 10. And if you've got a spot where you've already seen adult mice with a litter, be patient, because a female with an established nest sometimes tries to force her way out through the same entry point several nights in a row before giving up and looking for another spot. It's normal to hear more activity the first 2 or 3 nights after sealing. That doesn't mean the method's failing. It means they're searching for a new way out, and in most cases they give up on that spot by the 4th or 5th night. Now the real test, the one that actually convinced me the first time I tried this. After sealing 5 entry points in my house one Sunday afternoon, I marked each spot with a small tag so I wouldn't have to hunt for them again. A week later I checked every single one. 0 new grease marks, 0 new pellets, and the most convincing part, the steel wool was still intact. No bite marks, no gnawing attempts. When before applying the oil, I'd seen plain steel wool plugs with clear tooth marks on the edge. That's what confirmed for me that combining a physical barrier with a scent repellent does something neither one does on its own. It doesn't just block, it discourages the attempt before it even starts. And here's something honest that no salesman will tell you. This isn't magic, and it's not instant if your house has a large, active infestation with mice already living inside the walls or the attic. In that case, you first need to get the ones already inside out, using regular traps indoors, and only seal the outside entry points afterward. Because if you seal everything before they get out, you risk trapping them inside the wall. The right sequence is, set simple traps indoors first for a few days. Then, once indoor activity drops off, seal the outside entry points using this method. For a house with only light activity, or if you're preventing a problem before it starts, you can go straight to sealing without that first step. I want to tell you something else I learned over time, because I didn't know it the first time around, and it would have saved me a few nights of doubt. There's a huge difference between an active hole and an old one nobody's using anymore. And if you can't tell them apart, you end up wasting time sealing spots that were never the problem, while the mouse keeps coming in somewhere else. An active hole has smooth, almost polished edges, because the animal's fur brushes against it over and over, night after night, and that constant friction wears the surface down in a very particular way that's hard to mistake for anything else. An old hole, on the other hand, has rough edges, dust built up inside, cobwebs if enough time's passed, and no fresh grease marks at all. When I started out, I sealed 3 holes that were actually already abandoned and left the one they were really using untouched, because it looked too small, and I figured nothing could fit through it. That was my mistake, and it's why I push so hard on checking each one closely with a flashlight before deciding which ones to treat first. I also want to talk about something I noticed as the seasons went by, because this isn't something you do once in your life and forget about forever, even though the title makes it sound that way because that's how the result feels. What actually happens is that you've permanently sealed the access with the steel wool. That part really is permanent. A mouse physically cannot get back through a point that's well plugged with packed steel fiber. What's worth checking, especially in the fall, when the weather starts cooling and rodents get more desperate to find shelter than at any other time of year, is whether a new hole has opened up somewhere else in the structure. Because wood shifts, concrete cracks over time, pipes expand and contract, and sometimes a new gap opens where there wasn't one before. That fall checkup takes me about 15 minutes walking around the house with the same flashlight, and over the last 3 years I've only found one new spot, which I sealed with the same method in under 10 minutes. Another question I get a lot is whether this works the same way on rats, because some people mix up the two problems or have both at once. A rat is a different animal, bigger, with a stronger jaw, and while the peppermint scent bothers it too, you need to use more steel wool, bigger and more tightly packed plugs, because a rat with enough time and enough hunger can eventually wear through a thin layer of steel fiber, something a regular mouse almost never manages. If you're dealing with rats and not mice, The principle is exactly the same. Just double the material at every point and check more often during the first 2 weeks. Let me tell you about a neighbor of mine too, because this didn't stay confined to my own house. A neighbor a couple miles down the road had a serious problem in the barn where he stored feed for his animals, to the point where he was losing whole bags of grain every month because mice were tearing into them and contaminating them with droppings, which, on top of the money lost, is a real disease risk for the rest of his animals. He'd already paid for pest control service 2 seasons in a row, with the same result every time. The mice would disappear for 2 weeks and come right back as soon as the contract ran out. I showed him this same method one Saturday. We found 14 different entry points in his barn, which is bigger than my house, and what used to cost him nearly $200 a month in exterminator visits now costs him less than $10 a year in peppermint oil refills and the occasional extra steel wool pad when he finds a new spot. That was almost 2 years ago, and the last time we talked he told me he hasn't lost a single bag of grain since. I want you to understand why this kind of solution almost never gets advertised anywhere, and it's not because it doesn't work, it's the exact opposite. A whole industry of exterminators, electronic gadgets, and chemical sprays depends on you buying something every month or every season. If I hand you a $3 fix that lasts for years, that industry loses a repeat customer for good. There's no marketing campaign behind steel wool and peppermint oil because there's no big company making money every time you use it. That's why this knowledge survived in families like mine, passed down generation to generation, and it barely shows up in the first search results when someone looks for help online, because what's up there are the ones paying for ads, not necessarily the ones who actually solve your problem. Nobody paid me to tell you this, and I have no interest in you going back to buying $20 sprays that don't work. I tried this myself first before showing it to you, in my own house, with my own money, after spending a lot more on solutions that promised results in a pretty box and delivered nothing. The reason this works when everything else fails is simple. It goes after the real problem, which is physical access, and it uses the animal's strongest sense, smell, against it. Instead of trying to compete with artificial products, a mouse learns to ignore within days. If you don't believe me, and it's fine if you don't yet, try it yourself this afternoon on just one hole in your house, and tell me in the comments what happened a week later. I've seen a lot of people in my community go from paying an exterminator every month to spending nothing in under a month with this, and it's not because we've got anything special going on. It's simply what worked for generations before the whole chemical and gadget industry showed up selling expensive solutions to a problem that gets solved with $3 and half an hour of your time on a Sunday afternoon. Before I wrap up, I want to leave you with one last thing, the part that took me the longest to understand at first, and that makes the biggest difference in how this turns out. Patience in the first 3 days is what separates the people who make this actually work from the ones who give up halfway through thinking it didn't do anything. The colony doesn't vanish overnight just because their access got blocked. Because they still remember the route, they still try the same path a few more times out of instinct before accepting it's not there anymore. If you seal something on a Friday and Saturday night, you can still hear some activity near that spot. That's not a sign of failure. That's exactly the phase you should expect. What you want to check is whether the steel wool is still intact and whether any deep new bite marks have shown up. Because as long as the barrier holds, the result comes. It just isn't instant on the first night. Save this video, send it to someone you know who's still complaining about mice and expensive exterminators, and next time you hear that noise in the wall at night, you'll know exactly what to do before you spend another dime.